The people you watch who seem completely unbothered by trends, wear what they want, like what they like, never explain themselves, they're not rejecting culture, they've simply developed psychological immunity to something designed to be addictive. This immunity makes them more influential, not less. While everyone else is 3 steps behind copying what worked last season, these people have already moved into psychological freedom that most of us mistake for confidence. But it's not confidence, it's a specific cognitive pattern, and it's learnable. The exhaustion you feel scrolling through trends you don't understand, buying things you don't need, constantly measuring yourself against people who seem to have figured out something you haven't, that feeling has a name. It's the cost of outsourcing your sense of self to a system designed to keep you chasing some people early on. Developed immunity, not through willpower, through something much quieter, and once you understand how they did it, you'll see why you can too. There's a particular kind of anxiety that comes from living inside trend cycles. It's not about fashion or social media, it's about validation. You scroll and you're not just consuming information, you're scanning for proof that what you're doing, thinking, caring about is correct. That you're in step, that you won't be left behind. Your brain receives a constant stream of social signals. Each one creates a small question: should I care about this? Should I want this? Should I be this? It's decision-making on a loop, except the loop never stops, because by the time you've answered one question, 5 more have arrived. This is what trend obsession actually feels like on the inside. It's not about loving trends, it's about constant pressure to prove that you're current, relevant, acceptable. Psychologists call this external validation, when your sense of worth depends on outside approval. Most people don't experience it as a psychological term, they experience it as exhaustion, as a low-level anxiety that doesn't quite have a shape. The people who don't obsess over trends aren't rebelling against this system, they've simply stopped feeding it. Understanding how they did that requires going back to where this pattern started, because for most trend-obsessed people, the roots are deep. There's usually a time in your life when staying current mattered for survival. Maybe it was social acceptance in school, maybe it was fear of being mocked or excluded, maybe it was a family that valued status signals, the right clothes, the right interest. The child in that environment learns something crucial: your worth is visible to others through what you display. If what you display becomes outdated, your worth becomes questionable, so you stayed alert, you learned the codes you memorized, what mattered. This adaptive strategy kept you safe, it kept you belonging, it kept you seen. But here's the thing about adaptive strategy: they don't turn off when you become an adult and the original threat disappears. Your nervous system still believes being outdated means being invisible. That authenticity is a luxury you can afford, that the real you isn't enough without proof of currency. So even as an adult, you find yourself caught in the same loop. You're at a dinner party and you're not fully present. Part of your attention is devoted to whether your reference points are current. You buy things you don't love because they signal you understand. You second-guess your own tastes because you've spent so long checking them against external standards. You've built a life where your sense of self is constantly being renegotiated based on what the culture is currently valuing. The cost of this, the real cost, is that you've become dependent on a system that by design never lets you feel secure. The people who don't obsess over trends had a different kind of environment, not necessarily better, just different. They were often in situations where their worth was measured by something more stable than visibility. Maybe they were valued for curiosity, for competence. Maybe their family didn't care much about status signals at all. Maybe they were raised in a context where standing out felt safer. Or maybe they had enough unconditional acceptance early that they didn't develop the nervous system belief that acceptance has to be earned. Whatever the origin, they developed an internal reference point. They learned to check decisions against their own values rather than external approval. This isn't willpower. This is a different source code. When you understand this, the adult behavior makes sense. The trend-immune person isn't resisting trends through discipline. They're simply asking a different question when they encounter a new thing. Instead of "should I care about this to stay relevant?" they ask "do I actually want this?" One question generates anxiety, the other generates clarity. One requires constant external feedback, the other requires that you know yourself well enough to trust your own answer. This is what looks like confidence from the outside, but it's actually just a pattern of making decisions from a different place. Psychologist Edward Deci called this self-determination, when your choices come from your own values rather than external pressure. But the real name for it is freedom, and people who experience it tend to move through the world in a way that makes everyone else want to follow. The moment someone stops trying to be current, they often become the most interesting person in the room. They wear clothes that express something true about them, and suddenly those clothes feel like a statement. They talk about interests that aren't trending. Those interests seem deeper, they're not performing anymore, so there's an authenticity to their presence that's rare in a culture built on performance. And here's what happens next. Everyone notices not because they're standing out, because they've stopped blending in. They've created space around themselves that others feel drawn to fill. Their indifference to trends becomes its own kind of cultural currency. The highest kind, actually, because it can't be manufactured. You can fake not caring about trends. That's the one thing social media can't sell. But there's something else happening. Neurologically, the people who don't obsess over trends have trained their attention differently. Psychologist Robert Cialdini spent decades studying what he called social proof, the tendency to do things because we see others doing them. It's a powerful biological mechanism we're meant to learn from the group. But Cialdini also documented that some people are more resistant to this signal, not because they're special, but because they've learned to notice when they're being influenced, and they've decided not to let that determination happen passively. This is what selective attention looks like. You're not suppressing the social proof signal. You're simply not registering it as urgent. Your brain stops translating "everyone wants this" into "I need this." It's a small shift, but neurologically it's significant, and it compounds. Each time someone resists a trend and nothing bad happens, their brain updates its threat model. This is how immunity builds. When you were young, following social signals kept you safe, so your nervous system coded social proof as survival information. But as you repeat the experience of not following a trend and remaining safe, accepted, even respected, your brain slowly recalibrates. The threat wasn't real. You can be yourself and still belong. You can have different tastes and still matter. After enough repetitions of this, something shifts. Following trends starts to feel riskier than not following them. Because now you associate trends with anxiety and inauthenticity, and you associate your own values with safety and integrity. The confidence people see isn't the source, it's the result. It's what happens when you've repeatedly proven to yourself you can survive being different. Meanwhile, the people still caught in trend cycles are experiencing something else: decision fatigue. Every trend is a new decision. Every decision depletes your psychological resources. Researchers who study willpower and decision-making have found that we have a limited amount of cognitive energy each day. The more decisions we make, the more depleted we become. The person following trends is making micro-decisions constantly. What should I wear to seem current? What should I care about? What should I pretend to like? What should I post? These aren't big decisions, but they're constant, and they compound into a state of chronic low-level anxiety. You're always slightly behind, always slightly worried, always slightly performing. This is the hidden cost of trend obsession. It's not just about superficiality. It's about the depletion that comes from outsourcing your sense of self to an external system. The people immune to this are immune because they've pre-committed to standards. They know who they are before the trend arrives. So when the trend comes, there's no decision to make it either aligns with their values or it doesn't. Yes or no? This eliminates 80% of the micro decisions that drain the trend-obsessed person, and that freed up cognitive energy goes somewhere: into work, into relationships, into actual creativity, instead of reaction, into knowing themselves better. It's not that they're smarter or better disciplines. They've simply eliminated an entire category of exhausting decision-making. There's another pattern worth naming. The people who don't obsess over trends tend to have something researchers call intrinsic motivation. They're driven by internal goals, not external rewards. They want to understand things because understanding is interesting. They want to create because creation feels meaningful. They want to connect with people because connection feels human. This is different from extrinsic motivation, which is about external approval. When your motivation is intrinsic, trends become background noise. They're not threatening because they're not relevant to what you actually care about. Your attention is pointed inward and toward things you choose, not outward, and toward things the culture is telling you to want. The reframe here is essential because it changes everything. These people aren't better than you. They're not more evolved. They didn't have more willpower or more confidence to start with. They developed a different relationship with validation, and here's what matters. That relationship is learnable. You can change your past, you can undo the early environments that taught you to measure yourself against external standards, but you can over time shift your reference point. You can start asking different questions. You can practice making decisions based on what you actually want rather than what you think you should want. You can pay attention to how your body feels when you're following someone else's rules versus when you're following your own. You can notice repeatedly that nothing catastrophic happens when you're different. You can observe that the people you most respect are respected partly because they know who they are. The pattern isn't about rejecting culture or becoming a contrarian or pretending you don't care about anything. Some people genuinely love trends. They get real joy from the creativity and novelty. That's fine. This is about the difference between enjoying something and feeling trapped. It's about the difference between making choices and constantly feeling chosen by circumstance. It's about moving from a state where your sense of self is always up for negotiation to a state where your sense of self is stable enough What you'll notice as you start paying attention to the people who embody this is something quiet. They move through the world with a kind of simplicity that seems almost old-fashioned. They wear clothes that fit their body and their life, not clothes that fit this moment in culture. They talk about things that matter to them, not things that matter to the algorithm. They make decisions based on criteria that might not make sense, and they're okay with that. They don't need to explain themselves because they're not performing themselves. Because they're not performing, there's nothing defensive about them. No need to prove, no need to be right, no need to stay ahead. This is what looks like confidence from the outside, but on the inside, it's freedom. Freedom from the exhausting work of keeping up, freedom to just be. The quiet authority this creates is the opposite of flashy. It doesn't announce itself, but everyone feels it. This is why people who don't obsess over trends often become the people everyone wants to follow, not because they're trying to lead, because they stop trying to be followed, and that absence of desperation is the most attractive thing in a culture built on desperation. Their indifference is their power, and their power comes from a simple shift. They decided that their own judgment was more trustworthy. If this lands for you, if something in this explanation made you feel understood in a way you haven't before, that's the sign. The sign that you're ready to start experimenting with your own reference point. The next time you feel the pull to care about something trending, pause. Ask yourself if you actually want it or if you're performing wanting it. Notice what that distinction feels like. Keep noticing. Over time, the signal gets clearer that clarity is the beginning of everything else.